Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this UWC Virtual Visit Days. I'm your host, Marty Bennett, and today, as part of the inaugural Virtual Visit Days, we're going to be hearing in the first hour from panelists that'll be covering topics related to need-based financial aid, the importance of essays in the admissions process, and then also U.S. campus life and what you need to know about that transition to our U.S. college campuses. We're really excited about today's first of its kind virtual visit days for the UWC Davis partner institutions to connect directly with our UWC schools overseas. There are 19 of you around the world in 18 different countries, and many of you are on the call today, and we're really excited to be giving you an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists today. But more importantly, after this first hour is complete, 48 of our US colleagues will be in their own meeting rooms, giving you the opportunity to meet with them personally and ask your questions about their schools and how you might be a good fit for them. And for those of you that are seniors, we're really excited that you're entering a very different school year than you ever might have imagined for your senior year. And we really, and our college colleagues on the US college side certainly realize it's going to be very different for them as well. And they want to provide you as much information as possible today that will help you make decisions, informed decisions about where your future might lie in the United States if we are the destination for your higher education studies. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be getting started here in just a minute. After some housekeeping details, I do have one question for those that are in attendance today before we get to the panelists. And that question is, I'm going to pop up a poll and we're going to ask you which UWC school you're attending. We unfortunately, they didn't give us enough to get all 19 of you on the list. So if you can go ahead and answer your poll, letting us know who's in the room here. We've got some great representation from Singapore today, from Dover and East campuses. And Mahindra World College is in the house as well. So it's great to see all of you here today. And we're looking at some really strong numbers here, and thank you for voting on the poll. We'll leave that open for just a couple more minutes. And after we're done with the poll, just a couple of housekeeping details. If you would like to ask questions of our panelists, we're trying to keep these presentations fairly short. There's a lot of ground to cover, obviously, in these, and we want to make sure if there are important questions you have, we try and leave some time for that. So if you do have questions, please use the Q&A. The Q&A box link on your screens, on your toolbars, and that will help us get a sense. So thanks everybody for completing the polling, and it looks like we've got a great range of the UWC schools in the event today, and it looks like, yeah, we have all 7 of the Asia schools represented, which was our primary audience for this event, and we're looking forward to getting to you with our presentations here in just a minute. So I'm going to share the results with you so you can all see who's in the house. And it looks like at our Southeast Asia East Campus is just nicked ahead of UWC India for the most participants at the event. So thanks so much for being a part of the event today. And we'll get to our first presentation in just a minute. And that'll be by John Lund, one of our longtime Davis partner institutions at Luther College in Iowa. And I'll let John introduce himself, and he'll get to the question on, first up will be need-based financial aid, and something that will be fairly important for many of you who are attending today. So John, please take it away.
Thank you, Marty. And yeah, it's nice to be here with all of you. Marty said long time serving, which I think means that I'm old. So I've been at Luther for beginning of my 25th year, and I've been working with the Davis program for 15 years. So I'm pleased to talk a little bit about scholarship and financial aid. And Marty, I did not, oh, here we go, okay. So what I want to do is spend about 15 minutes with you giving you the big picture on scholarship and financial aid as it relates to funding for a Davis UWC student. And I'm going to do that by looking at fundamentally just 4 slides. And the reason is that this presentation is really about the big picture. One of the joys of US colleges and universities is that you have lots of choices. There are over 4,000 colleges and universities in the US. One of the challenges for you is it means that to many of your questions in terms of what do I need to get admitted, how does scholarship and financial aid work, it means you might get 4,000 different responses. So instead of going into the detail on specific aid awards, what I want to do is take a step back and look at the big picture about how all of this comes together, both for you and for the colleges and universities itself. So we're going to start by looking at some of the sources of funding. And obviously you're at the heart of your whole educational experience. And so the different sources are primarily family is first. In the US colleges and universities have a need-based aid philosophy. And part of that philosophy is that families bear the primary responsibility for funding education for kids. And you can see that that funding comes from a variety of different areas within the family. So it could be savings, it could be some families will take out loan, maybe it's a sale of property. But what the family is doing is that they're trying to provide the resources necessary to help that student fund their education. So families play a big role in this process. But we also realize that for many families, education, particularly US college education, stretches their ability to help fund that. And so that's where these other sources come into play. So the biggest source of funding is actually the college itself. So if you think about it, most colleges and universities in the US are rather expensive. At Luther, our I-20 cost is about $60,000. So it means that for students who need virtually full funding, Luther actually provides the primary source of support to make it possible for the student to come if the family is not able to contribute much or anything toward funding that education. So colleges get it through something called an endowment primarily. Endowments are hundreds of millions of dollars that have been set aside over the time that the college or university has existed, and it's used to help in a variety of different ways, scholarship support being one of them. Foundations, friends, and outside agencies are another important source. The Davis Scholarship actually fits into that. So we're blessed in the US to have lots of partners who are helping us as we try to figure out how to fund an education. And certainly the Davis Scholarship is a marvelous gift that provides opportunities for students to attend college and university in the US that would otherwise not happen. And governments play a role as well. Now, most of my chat today will not be directed to US citizens, although I know there are US citizens who are part of the Davis program. So for a US citizen, you have the ability to tap into federal and perhaps even state resources as part of the process for you. For some of you, depending on where you're coming, your countries might actually have education support to help in your funding as well. So you think of the Norwegian Lånekassen, Sweden has a small program, Canada, some Canadian provinces have programs. So all of those sources of support come together to help fund ultimately the student's education. So those are the sources. The funding itself comes from a variety of different sources. And the way I like to think of college funding is you think about buckets of money. We would all love buckets of money that we have the ability to dip into in order to, I don't know why, sorry. My screen keeps flipping forward too far. So you think about those buckets of funding. So you have a bucket for scholarships, a bucket for need-based aid, and a bucket for other. And what colleges are doing is we're sort of taking money out of those different buckets and using it to allocate to students. And the thing that's important to realize is that all of the buckets get coordinated. So we're going to talk about those different sources of support. So if you think about scholarships, certainly academic scholarships play a big role in it. Academic scholarships are awarded by the institution, and it varies from institution to institution on what goes into that. There are some of the Davis schools that will not award academic scholarship. Everything is done through the need-based aid bucket. Many of the UWC schools do award academic scholarship, and it's usually based on your prior criteria. So it's used to award students who have done well prior to coming to the college or university. And it may be affected by your IB predicted scores. It may be affected by an SAT or ACT result. It may be affected by the strength of your interview. There are lots of things that play into that depending on the institution. At some of the UWC Davis schools, athletic scholarships play a role in it. So if the school is a Division I or a Division II institution, they might have very competitive athletics and award athletic scholarships. There are other schools like Luther that are Division III schools, and so we don't award any athletic scholarships at all. That's not to say that Division III schools don't have great student athletes on campus. It's just that philosophically they've made the decision not to award based on athletics. At some schools, talent plays a role in it. So you might get a scholarship for music, or you might get it for art or theater or dance. In the cases of those types of scholarships, most often you need to submit some sort of portfolio or perhaps an audition. And the idea with both athletic and talent is that US colleges and universities, we value students who come in with gifts and abilities in lots of different areas and are looking for students who really bring with them lots of different strengths and backgrounds. Location and affiliation may play a role in it. So at some institutions, there might be scholarships that are designated for students from particular countries, or it might be a particular affiliation. So you think of a scholarship that's based for students from a particular religious background, for example, based on history typically at the college or university. So there are ways that students may get funding from that bucket. And then the last thing are characteristics such as a diversity, trying to get students from different parts of the world. So lots of different ways. The second bucket is the need-based aid bucket. And in a lot of colleges and universities, that's actually the biggest source of funding. So it's based on a family's ability to fund their education. As I mentioned at the beginning, that there's the belief that families bear the primary responsibility to fund education if they are able, up to what they are able to. And then after that, the other sources of funds play a role in it. Typically, students have to demonstrate need, and at colleges and universities in the US for international students, typically that's done by you completing the CSS profile. At some schools, it might be the ISFA, the International Student Financial Aid Application. And in the case of both of them, what they do is they provide some sort of indication to the college or university about the student's ability to fund their education. For US students, you also have a form to complete. At some colleges, it would be the CSS profile, and at other schools, it would be the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So at Luther, for example, whether you're international or a US citizen, all students are having to provide this information because we have a need-based aid philosophy, and so we need to capture that information to know how much funding to provide. And then the way in which that funding is distributed at a need-based aid school is really based on the college's financial aid philosophy. So the degree to which colleges want to to leverage their financial aid to make it possible for students from a variety of different backgrounds to be able to attend. And then the last source is the other bucket. The other bucket includes things like the Davis Scholarship. So as you know, the schools that are represented today are all part of the Davis Scholarship Program. It means some schools have the ability to award up to $10,000 in scholarship based on the generous gifts from Mr. and Mrs. Davis. At other schools, the school can award up to $25,000 in Davis Scholarship, and it all depends on the number of Davis Scholars that are currently on that campus. There are other outside scholarships that may come into play depending on which college or university you're looking at. At some schools, loan might be a part of it in the sense of Davis Scholars having a small loan that helps contribute to it. At other schools, that's not the case. And you'll find a variety of different other things from a transition grant to perhaps helping with flights, orientation fees, paying for a SEVIS I-901 fee. The thing to keep in mind is that all of these sources of funding then, these buckets of money come together, the college provides the scholarship and financial aid, and it all adds up to covering the costs. So on the next slide, you can see, let me do this, the types of funding that are available. Or the types of costs, and there are a variety of different costs. And I won't go into these in depth because this is actually the clearest part of the whole presentation. But when we talk about costs, we're talking about everything: tuition and fees, room and meals, books, transportation, taxes, insurance, all of the things that are part of being able to contribute to helping pay for the college. So colleges are looking at all of that as we determine the type of need that's available. And the last slide I want to leave with before we have time for just a couple questions is sort of the big picture on all of this. I started saying that I wanted to give you the big picture, and the big picture, I think, involves a number of different things. I think it's looking at the fact that economists tell us that education is both a public and a private good, meaning that you benefit and society benefits from it. That's what's so marvelous about the Davis Scholarship, is it's really leveraging that to help create a world that's a better place. But you benefit from it as well. And because you benefit from it, it leads to the next big concept that education itself is both valuable and valued. And I think that it's important for all students as they go through the process to keep that in mind, simply because I frequently hear from students, the question is, well, will you provide full funding? And I sort of joke back and say, well, if education is both valuable and valued, don't you think that you have a part to play in that, even in a modest way, even if that comes from you using your work study earnings, for example, as a way of helping to contribute to your own education. So if it's both valued and valued, then you would think that everybody should contribute a little bit. And that then moves into the next concept that I think is tied into financial aid, and that's the whole issue of equity and fairness. And so I think the way in which colleges fund education, many schools do it to leverage the ability for individuals who otherwise can't afford to attend to do it. So it raises questions of equity and fairness and educational privilege. The questions on my mind, for example, every year that I grapple with is how much money should be awarded to a student, knowing that the funds are not limitless, and knowing that part of what that I want to do is to use the funds to be able to support as many bright students from around the world who deserve an education. And by doing that, what it means is that should I award really perhaps more than enough for some students and have to deny other students the ability for attending a college or university. So for colleges, it's a bit of a challenge as well. What we're trying to do is to divide up the funds in a way that we think is equitable and fair, and to provide opportunities for as many students as possible. And that then, to me, goes to the last component of this, and that means that there's a bit of a personal commitment on your part. No matter where you go, no matter what the scholarship and funding is, I fundamentally believe that since you benefit from college and society benefits, and the colleges benefit, that all of us have to play a part in making this possible. So with that, I'll stop, and I've got about a minute and a half or so for a couple questions.
All right, thank you very much, John. We've got a few questions here, and we'll try and get to them as quickly as possible. And I know, as many international students know, certainly our U.S. colleagues know, as you ask questions of U.S. institutions, unfortunately, the most common answer you get is it depends. And as my colleagues are answering some of the questions in chat, what's one question right away for you, John, regarding scholarships that individual institutions have specifically for UWC students? Are they openly mentioned on the website, or is that pretty much, does that come after the fact, after they apply? How do they find out those specific answers to what kind of scholarships are available at each institution as a UWC student?
So I would say it depends. I hate to tell you that, but I think what ends up happening, that's a great sort of question to ask the college or university. I would ask lots of questions. Many schools will simply say, will actually list what those sources of funding are. We do not do that at Luther, for example. And so what I tell students is that we will try to make it possible. We do make it possible for them to attend based on their need if they're admitted. But actually listing those sources, we don't go to that detail. Some schools might.
Very good. Thank you, John. And there are a lot of other great questions. And for the most part, anything that you're asking here would be the kinds of questions you want to ask the individual college representatives at the colleges that interest you when we're finished with the presentations here. And that's a great transition for us to talk in. One of you had asked, does scholarship, if I'm a UWC student, does scholarship impact my chances of getting in? Typically, the answer will be no for that. I know Peter's going to address a question later about how the pandemic is affecting campus life for new students. And in the admissions process, I know many of us will say, almost all of us on the call today and in the individual meeting rooms will say they're probably going to be test optional for the current year at least. Again, the answer to those questions is it depends regarding SAT and ACT. But we'll go and turn it over now to Nicole Buenzli at Union College in Schenectady, New York, and she's going to walk us through some important pieces on the importance of essays, one of the other major components of the college admissions process. So Nicole, please take it away.
Thank you, Marty. I'm going to see if we can flip through to the essay. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Buenzli, and I am the Director of International Admissions at Union College. And I'm going to cover just a couple of things that I could typically cover in probably an hour-long essay writing workshop. But just to start with, I think the very first writing piece that will be new this year for students applying is the COVID-19 writing piece. And that piece is a separate section from the essay. And I mentioned this just so that when you're thinking about how to organize your application, think about your application as a reflection of you as an entire individual. And knowing that students have been affected in different ways by COVID-19, different applications have offered this space to indicate maybe extenuating circumstances or personal issues that students may want to address with the colleges. So this space is specifically for COVID-19. If you have anything you'd like to mention about COVID-19, please put it in this section and leave the remainder of your application to the things specific to you in terms of any other year. Do you have to complete this section? You do not. We, as colleges and universities, will assume that everyone's been affected by COVID-19. This is really a space for students to indicate if there are things outside of our common shared experience that a student would like to address. So I will leave that portion to you to kind of think about. Again, not a required section to discuss. So typically when I'm talking about or mention essay writing, people initially go, oh, cool. And if you haven't seen this movie, I have twin 12-year-olds. You're going to see a lot of really great animated film clips here. But Spies in Disguise, I love the movie. I highly recommend it if you like an animated film. But what I want to tell you is that we're going to walk through a couple things that hopefully make the essay a little more approachable. So first, what is the purpose of the essay? And I think the main purpose for you to understand is not necessarily what question you're answering, but it's an opportunity for you to shed a little bit of light or put a little personality on your application outside of your transcripts and your activities. So that'll be things that allow you to sort of show a little bit more deeply who you are or reflect on some unique portions of you. And you can do that by sharing, as it says here, different parts of your ambitions, your interests, but it shouldn't be a reflection of other parts of your application. So we will kind of talk through the do's and don'ts a little bit more later. One place that often people will start is with the common application prompts. So these are the common application prompts for this year. And one way you could begin thinking about it is that within each of the questions, I've highlighted some red sections here in the questions that really kind of pop out what the essence or the point of the question is. So something that's meaningful to you, something you've learned, something you're thinking about, something that's captivated you. So one way you could approach the essay is to look at those words in red and think about, do one of these speak to me, and do I want to begin by thinking about this question and addressing that personal prompt or topic. So it's one place that you could very much start. But where I like to start thinking about it is from an entirely different perspective. It's not really the topic that matters or the question that's asked. It's sort of a way to get you to start thinking about a topic for your essay. But really, what the essay is trying to convey to us, again, is to reveal something about you and how you can write. So you kind of can shine a little bit more if you're writing from something that's very personal or a personal experience. So the question really is, who am I, right? And again, Finding Nemo. And that's a hard question to answer sometimes. Who am I? Where do I begin with an essay that focuses on who am I? So there are a couple of approaches that you can take in terms of getting to the who am I piece. Again, this is from Inside Out. And if you haven't seen it, this is inside a young girl's brain. And we're looking out on her different sort of personality islands. And I love this concept to kind of think about your sort of main personality pieces or things that are important to you, creating islands. So here you'll see her family island, fun island, hockey island, friendship island. These are things that I can say are probably a theme of importance for her. So one place to start is maybe, what are your islands? And are there some core memories? They talk a lot in the movie about your core memories or memories that have special significance. So you could either think about one of these islands and really highlight a core memory to allow us to get to know who you are, or throughout your essay, you could pick a theme and tie together your different islands. So just one idea about how to sort of generate, how to talk about you. The next couple of ideas come from a resource called the College Essay Guy. The website is free for students to use his resources. And he talks a little bit about making a list of 21 interesting facts about yourself. And they just can be random. They don't have to be anything sort of monumental or fantastic. I put a couple of mine here. And so what you could do is, as you're sort of brainstorming 21 random facts or interesting things, maybe you'll come up with one that really speaks to you in terms of a memory, or maybe you can tie some of those facts or pieces from your 21 fun things together into an interesting essay. So I think that's one place that you can begin to sort of generate ideas. And he offers up some really great questions too, to kind of get you thinking about these things. The other thing is talking about essence objects. So if you had to sort of think about things that are big or small that maybe are important to you and maybe on the surface may seem very random, but really can speak to you as a person. What are those essence objects? So making a list. So for example, at the top of my list here is pickled herring. My grandmother always pickled herring. It was part of our sort of heritage and tradition. And it's kind of a unique thing to do, especially in the US. But it has like this very visceral memory for me of my grandma and being at her house, and just as soon as I sort of think about it, it brings me to that moment and that connection with her. And all of these essence objects that I've listed here, they are personally mine, but though they seem generic, like a passport, when I think about them, I have a story or many stories behind them. So those might be, just your random essence objects and how you can pull them together in your essay. So this is also provided on the College Essay Guys page, and he just, again, has a whole bunch of questions that can just help you brainstorm, okay? So sometimes when you're starting to think about you don't realize how cool you are. You guys are all incredibly awesome individuals just by essence of being you. But, maybe when you're in high school and at this point you haven't had time to sort of reflect on all the cool things about you. So this is another way for you to sort of pull together different itty bitty pieces of you into what could be good ideas or sort of meaningful inspiration towards an essay. So all of your essays can kind of take form. Like I said, you could string together a beautiful memory or different personality islands. There are different ways that you can kind of think about what you want to reflect in your application. Do you want to be very focused on one individual memory or topic or item, or do you want to sort of cover a broad concept? Again, the key thing is to tell us about you, whatever sort of format you choose. A common format that I will mention is the challenges essay. And the way that I talk about this is there was a problem that I faced, and I conquered that problem by doing X, Y, and Z, and I saved the day. So, or it went poorly, or however, but often students will choose the challenges essay as a topic or a format for their essay. And I will say that it has to be the most difficult format for students to choose, and that is because if you're not careful, it can tell me a little bit about the challenge and not a lot about you. So as it's listed here, there are some things that you can go through and think about in terms of the effects, the feelings, what you learned about it, but just making sure you're driving it in home a little bit more to your personal experience and how you dealt with the challenge, rather than just telling us about a common challenge that we might read about quite often. I seem to be stuck. I think someone, there we go. So in the end, what's your story is the main point, and ways to be able to tell your story is how you show, not tell. So some of the writing formats, again, that you can use to think about expressing yourself is to use a lot of nouns and verbs, as it says here, to really give us a dramatic feeling of what you're talking about. It's not needed to use a ton of advanced language or huge vocabulary, but describing through your senses. I always say if an essay allows you to use all of your senses, see, smell, touch, taste, that allows you to really get into an essay and be in the space of what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. So my tips, my closing tips here are: don't repeat what is in other parts of your application in your essay. So don't restate your experiences or activities that you have listed in the activity section. Don't repeat those as a resume format in your essay. If you've discussed something in another part of your application, it shouldn't go in your essay. Be sure, if we're talking especially about the challenges essay, to show the outcome. So what happened at the end and how did it specifically affect you? If you are picking a prompt, make sure you address the prompt, especially for schools that set forth a specific prompt for you to answer. Be authentic, so it should be your voice. Don't let anyone over edit or give external feedback to the point where it no longer feels like your essay or feels like you. Don't try too hard. We're not looking for a superstar reflection of every human. We just want to know a little bit more about you and your writing through your essay. We aren't necessarily going to pick every detail, every comma, every period, every turn of phrase, but it should be a good reflection of what you can do in writing, and also just give us a sense of who you are. And then finally, proofread, proofread, proofread. And I'd say the best way to hit all of these is to read it aloud. I always tell students to stand in a room and read your essay aloud to yourself or to someone else. But often when you're reading your essay aloud, you can hear that sort of sound, oh, this essay doesn't sound like me, or those words, I wouldn't say those words in my real life and when I'm speaking out loud, or this just it doesn't sound like my voice. So when you read it aloud, you can sometimes hear if it's a good reflection of you, if the essay is a good reflection of how you think or how you communicate. It also is a great way to catch any sort of errors in terms of grammar or missing words or punctuation. It's amazing when you read it aloud, it makes your brain slow down enough to catch some of the errors you might encounter. So those are my words of wisdom on essay writing. Please feel free to contact me anytime if you have any questions. I'm happy to help.
Great, thank you so much, Nicole. Great answers that you were able to provide and tips on essay writing, and a very important piece of that puzzle. And I know a number of you have asked questions in various ways related to how the pandemic is impacting what we do in university admissions in the United States. And as we can, Peter, I know you might be addressing some of this in what you talk about. Obviously, what is happening this fall on college campuses is very different than what happened last fall, and is likely to be very different than what happens next year when you might be entering as first-year students, or the year after. So we'll talk about those, and again, the kinds of questions that you're asking about amounts of scholarships and that type of thing, what's required at different schools. Those are the questions that really should be asked directly of the universities that you're going to be interacting with when we're done with the presentations today. So definitely encourage you to keep those questions if they don't get answered here, and ask them specifically in the college meeting rooms that you'll be going to when we're done here. And for our last presentation, before we break for the college fair portion of the program, we're going to turn it over to Peter Osgood at Harvey Mudd College out in California. Peter, take it away.
Thank you. So let me see if I can advance this. Yeah, I should be able to do this. Not working here. Let me try it again to do the remote control. Marty, I went back in to see if I could. Don't seem to, there we go. All right, so sorry for that little fumbling there. I'm not going to read all these slides to you. I figure all you students can read. The first couple of things I want to talk about are some of the basics, and I'm certain you'll be able to get this PowerPoint from Marty later on. But the first part of it is really conversation with your family about how you're going to function in the monetary world that you'll be in, setting a budget, things like that, how you're going to make things happen. And then the next two slides are going to be talking more about how you can be more self-actualized with this, how you can promote self-care and prepare yourself for the next step. So it's going to be important for you to make your college a home. And so think about the things that give you comfort. Think about if there's anybody near you that can be a resource for you. Do some long-term thinking about that. This is a part that also is going to be, there are certain rules in our country and in certain states that you'll have to abide by, and there's usually this information will be provided by some sort of an advisor for you before you come to the school. So most of these first slides are going to be issues you will consider for the first really in great measure after you've already committed to the school. This is not stuff that you have to make part of your application, but it's stuff that you'll have to be getting ready to move in. But here's where you also have to be much more alert to yourself. Now, you all have maybe an advantage over some of the other students joining our colleges because you've already lived in residential settings. And a lot of our students are not coming from places where they've had the kind of independence that you've been able to experience on your own. But the colleges are wealthy in the resources that they have available to you. And I'm going to invite you to be resourceful about using them. And so sometimes one might feel that it's, you know, it's awkward to be the one who's asking the questions, you're afraid you're being obnoxious, or you're asking too many questions, or it's only you that have the questions. But we are here to help you. So we hope that you'll take advantage of the resources that we have. But this involves also doing a bit of homework and understanding the rules of the school that you're a part of, so that you can abide by them. There may be certain rules about our college, for example, has an honor code, and we take very seriously questions of intellectual integrity. If you're repeating information that's sourced from somebody else, you have to attribute it. And in some other cultures, that may not be something that is required in academic settings. But I think a lot of this question of making your new home is important for you to evaluate your own values, your own attitudes, and in particular, if you are willing to engage other people rather than being quiet and observing first and then getting into making the friendships, that's going to be an important consideration for you. You're going to be making your own decisions. I'd invite you that college is a great time to take measured risks in your life. When you do this when you're later on in life and you're in your mid-30s and you have a family, it's much harder to take these kinds of risks. College is a great time to try things that are unfamiliar to you, to make new friends. What we don't want to have happen is that the international students all stay by themselves and talk to each other, or students from a particular region or country all stick together and speak the same language and don't interact with the students of the rest of the institution. I don't think you want that. So it's going to be important for you to take some choices, make some choices that extend you beyond your comfort zone. I think you'll be rewarded if you do. But understanding the college's culture is going to be an important part of it. That's information that you should be probably researching now and might help differentiate one college from another in your mind and decide whether one college you will apply to and the other one you will not. But one thing that is, let's just be honest, there's been a lot of press coverage. Our country has a lot of issues about privilege. And this is something that you will confront if you come to our country for university studies. We have a particular problem with race, as an example. But I think these are things that are going to work their way into your life in college, and you would be wise to study up about those issues so that you can engage those conversations with your peers. Maybe you're already past this first bullet point because you've lived in an international setting at your UWC, but this is a business of just making sure your habits are good and your self-care is good. Keep in mind that you're going to be in class probably in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 hours a week only. And so you have a lot more free time on your hands. You are going to have more freedom to explore the surrounding community. There are all kinds of opportunities that await you there. So I'm inviting you to say yes, but to say yes with some understanding that you shouldn't say yes all the time. This is a lot of time where students who are young are excited to be near each other. How deep are those relationships going to go? Understanding how important religion might be in your life or the lives of other students that you'll encounter at the school is going to be important. So I just invite you to sort of think about the environment that you're joining, where your boundaries are, and to make good use of those resources, and then to engage people. So the underlying point here is that it's going to be important for you to communicate. There's a lot of opportunities that these colleges and universities provide for you. Ultimately, you will need to take initiative. And I can expect that if you take that initiative, it will go a very long way, because people will be excited to know about you and your background, and for you to hear things from your peers and to have that roll that into your lived experience as well. So here are some tips. The first is just basically do your homework, do some research. I think it's really important for you to try to establish friendships, not only with other students, but with professors. Why is this important? Well, down the line, you may want to get involved in a research program. You may want to apply for an internship. If you have a professor who knows you a bit personally, it's going to be a much higher chance that you'll have a great opportunity presented to you because that person is advocating on your behalf. Even at a large university, this can happen, but it is particularly easy to do at small colleges, and most of the schools here today are such. I think you need to be ready to confront some of these issues of privilege and race and gender in our country. It is very much a fact of life, and it's more pronounced at universities than it is in everyday walk of life in our country. I mentioned before, trying to mix with different kinds of people is useful, but try not to treat people as if they're there to educate you, and that you're not there to educate them. This should be about relationships. So really invest in those relationships, and that communication is going to be key to doing so. And then take a minute. After you're maybe into the month of October or middle of October, just take a pause and reassess where you are. Give yourself a chance to see if you're going the right direction, if you're not, if the friendships you're making, if the relationships you're establishing, if your style, your homework style is working for you, your study habits. And then once again, make use of the resources. Stay in touch with people back at home. You may have to work out exactly when that happens. Make sure you have a good plan for your cell phone. Check back in with them and let them know how you're growing and changing, and make the best use of it. So with that, I think that's most of my comments. I did want to mention just briefly, there was a question about how COVID is affecting us. We college admission people do not have the big crystal ball for this. We're changing just as you are, but I think if there's ever been a year where we have to provide a lot of grace and understanding to students, this is that year. Many of you will not be able to take the standardized tests if you have not already done so. Your courses last year and this year are taught in a different way. You won't have had as much opportunity to engage with the colleges and universities. And the relationships you have with your teachers might have been undermined a little bit by COVID restrictions to be learning online. There's all kinds of interruptions in your life. We're going to be understanding of that, and we're going to try and understand better what your context is and try to do the best we can for the students that are applying to our schools. But we don't know if our applicant pool will increase or decrease, or if it will change in its constitution, if it's more students from the local environment or more students from around the world, because there's so much more effort in virtual communication. So I don't know that we have very good answers for you, but I think we'll be understanding, and we want to see you as a colleague in this process and help make good decisions both for the student and for the institution. So with that, I think I'm wrapped up. And Marty, I guess I'm supposed to kick it to you, or if there are questions that people have, that's it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Peter. Yeah, this is a time there's a lot of uncertainty for everybody, both as students in your schools overseas, that you're just getting back to school, and perhaps some of you are able to go fully in person. There might be some more safe and health protocols in place for you that might not have been there, well, certainly wouldn't have been there last year. Some of you are in schools that are going remote, that are hybrid, that are a mix. And that's very much the same as it is on campus for U.S. colleges right now. There's There's a lot of uncertainty as to when we'll be fully back to normal, if there ever is going to be a return to how we were. But there are certainly going to be changes, and that's part of life, is rolling with those changes. Some of these are more significant than others, obviously, in terms of their impact on what we do. And it's really an opportunity for us to see the bigger picture in terms of what we do here at U.S. colleges and universities. And really what I encourage all of us to think about in how we interact each day, how we approach each other, is just with a sense of grace and a sense of, hey, we're all going through this together. It's a shared experience, and one that is new for all of us. So I think that's in terms of the advice. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty for the months to come in terms of your college admissions process, how that will work for you, the answers to your questions, and many of you have asked these in the comments section. And I think those are going to be best answered by the individual universities and college representatives that you're going to get a chance to meet with in just a couple of minutes here. And in about 5 minutes, we're going to end the webinar here, and we're going to be kicking it back to a landing page for the event. And we're going to encourage you to take advantage of that time that you'll have to visit each of the individual colleges and universities that have made the effort to be with us here today. They have their own rooms. Some of them will have current students that are attending their campuses. Many of them who might be involved in today's chats in the rooms are former UWC students, maybe from your school. And it's really an opportunity for you. And in the end, as admissions people, we always know that though we're trained to be admissions people and know our institutions well and answer the questions that you might have, ultimately you want to hear from students like yourself that have gone through the process, that are living that experience now, that can give you a realistic sense of what it's like to be a student on the different colleges that you're visiting. And I saw one question that was asked during the presentations is, she said, I've visited so many colleges, they're all starting to blend together for me. How do I distinguish between one and the other? And that's a great question, and it's obviously a reality for many of you as you're making the decisions to where you're going to attend university next year or 2 years from now. You're looking at a lot of different factors. That financial aid is a piece, activities are a piece, academic programs is certainly going to be an important element, and many other factors, as Peter was mentioning, that campuses offer that you might not be aware of. And I know there were some questions that came in via email as well that asked about safety and what do you do when the student's in trouble financially on campus? How do you respond to that kind of a situation? So a lot of the questions that you might have, as we've talked about earlier, the answers will be very different depending on the college or university you're asking. So please take the time today. You have 2 hours after we're done here with this initial hour, 2 hours to go visit those colleges and universities and ask the kinds of questions that you have to help make your college search a much more productive one. And hopefully the chance to get in contact with some current students through the chat today at the different institutional rooms will be helpful to you as well, to help paint the picture for you of what it might be like to be a student on those different college campuses. So for now, I've dismissed our university reps to go to their individual rooms. So they'll be getting ready now in just a minute. They'll be popping over to do that. And I'm going to walk you right through how to get there, Mithy. Thanks for asking that question in the chat. We're going to be dismissing after this, after I end the webinar here. What will happen is you'll be taken to a landing page that will have the links to all of the individual colleges' meeting rooms. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute here when we're done with the program. You'll actually automatically be redirected to that website. So I'm going to actually share the website that we're talking about here in just a moment so that you'll be able to see what we're talking about. And we'll get to that in just a second. Here we go. And the website, this is everybody will be sees the website now, UWC Virtual Visit Days. On the left-hand side, you see a list of all the colleges and universities that are participating in the chat, and a lot of them will be doing video Q&A. Some will just be doing taking your chat questions. So some will have students in the room with them. Some will have students that they're bringing in remotely to connect with you as well. So this is the landing page so that you'll automatically be redirected to. Yeah, I will post that, the link to the chat in just a moment. When I close the webinar, a browser will open up on your PC, on your laptop, on your tablet, or on your phone. It'll direct you to this page. So you will all get there, I promise you. And we'll have the opportunity to really get you started and get you into the individual rooms that you're looking to connect with today. So these links are all live. They go straight to, it'll open up a new browser. When you get to this page, this landing page, I recommend that you bookmark this page because you want to come back to it as you go through the day. But the good thing is when you get to this page and you click on any of the links, it will open up in a new window, and I'll just demonstrate what that looks like here. So if I want to go see, we just saw Nicole over at Union College in Schenectady, New York. If I want to go see her room, I would click on the Union College link. It pops open a new browser. There's a quick information that she's asking to collect from you, and then you enter her room. So same way for any of the other institutions that you want to go see. There's 48 of them here today. We're really excited that so many of them are going to connect with so many of you. We've got over 380, almost 400 students that have come to this event live. More will be joining in as the event continues. So we're really excited about the opportunities you have to connect today with our college and university friends. So I'm posting the link now into the chat. You'll be able to see that in the chat. You got the link to this landing page, and then you'll be able to continue on to visit the university rooms and colleges today. So I want to say thank you, all of you, for joining in today, and we're really very much looking forward to the conversations you're going to have with our college representatives over the next couple of hours. So until next time, thanks for joining in. Have a wonderful day.